On April 4th, 1975, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Bill Gates and Paul Allen founded Microsoft. Little did they know this would change the world. But before we get into how it all started, let's go back to 1972. Bill Gates and Paul Allen founded a company called TrafoData. Its job was to read the data from traffic counters and make it into readable reports for the engineers. While the partnership only had moderate success, it was vital in the creation of Microsoft. And only 3 years later, on April 4th, 1975, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Bill Gates and Paul Allen founded the company that would invent, innovate, and change the world. Now you might be wondering, what was its first product? How did they go from being some two people in New Mexico to becoming one of the biggest companies in the world? Well, let me start with the first product, the Altar Basic. The Altar Basic was an interpreter for the BASIC programming language. It ran on an MITS Altar 8800. And I'm going to be honest, I have no idea what that means. But apparently, Bill and Paul decided that it would be more profitable for them to sell software instead of computers because computers were so. They thought that at the time that computers were going to go to a price that was so low it wouldn't be worth selling them. Fortunately, the first product of Microsoft was pretty successful, especially among hobbyists. But unfortunately, soon after, the software that was being distributed by Microsoft was being copied and distributed by the hobbyists, which eventually caused Bill Gates to write a letter to the hobbyists saying that what they were doing was not right. A lot of the hobbyists respond in a defensive way. All in all, this product was a success. But everything started to change in August of 1980 when Microsoft partnered with IBM, a very big tech company, to create the operating system for their computer. This was a huge opportunity for Microsoft. It was the first time that Microsoft was downloaded on computers before they were sold. This is very important because this is one of the main reasons Microsoft gets a lot of money today because of the operating system. In 1982, they decided to create a game called Flight Simulator. This is the longest running PC game of all time. In fact, pretty recently, on August 17th, 2020, they released a new flight simulator just called Flight Simulator, and it's some people have said that they really enjoy it. So it's cool to think that that game started in 1982. In 1983, Bill Gates introduced Microsoft Windows, which is one of the most influential, innovative things of this decade, maybe even this century. And it has impacted so many people. It has helped people to create so many things. This is one of the main reasons that Microsoft has become what it is, because of Windows, because of its operating system and pretty much everything it's done. In 1984, Apple's CEO, Steve Jobs, would introduce the Macintosh. It has a user interface window, or it allowed users to click on things, sort of like what we have today. Like you clicked on my video, and sort of like that. And Windows would actually adopt many of those things from Mac and implement it into their Windows systems. After a few years, in 1988, Apple would actually sue Microsoft, saying that they violated their copyright by using a lot of their Macintosh's features and interfaces. Like I said before, they implemented a lot, and Apple actually sued Microsoft for doing so. And Microsoft eventually won because the judge said that it wasn't really a copyright. They were just sort of implementing what they thought would be very successful on their part, or they weren't really copying them. Let me just say that. After about 7 years of innovating and adding new Windows, updating Windows, things like that, in 1995, Microsoft announced that it would be partnering with NBC to create the news network 24 Hours and MSNBC. You might have heard of it. It's still pretty popular today, I would say. 2 years later on, Apple announces it's partnering with Windows to create Microsoft Office for Mac and Internet Explorer as the default browser for Mac. This is pretty huge for Microsoft, and they invest $150 million in Apple. In 2000, Bill Gates steps down as CEO and hands his position over to Steve Ballmer. In 2005, Microsoft introduces a game changer in the console industry. They introduced the Xbox 360. A few years later, 2008, Bill Gates retires from Microsoft and decides to devote most of his time to philanthropy and working on his foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. In 2013, Microsoft launches Xbox One, the new addition to the Xbox 360. In 2015, Microsoft releases Xbox One, a game changer in the console. Many people would consider it some of the best. I don't, but a lot of people do. And I just want to mention that during this time, I skipped a lot of things. Like Microsoft, for example, bought Skype and MSN Messenger and lots of a ton of other companies. I just didn't think it was really important to this, to the foundation or the story of Microsoft. But I just want to mention that they do have a lot of things like that they bought, and that's pretty much the story of Microsoft. I know there's a lot that I skipped or I didn't really mention, but that's pretty much it. If you liked the video, thanks for watching.